I've purchased a Van & Camp side ladder. This one is the round tube. They have a square tube and a round tube, and this is the wheel wrap. They sell the wheel wrap in the straight model. This is it was $3.59. They had it on Amazon with a coupon, and I'm really impressed for the price. I have not installed any of the $800 other brand name ladders, but for the price, it looks really nice. The powder coating's really well done. It seems really solid. Only problem I had was it's like during shipping, one of the components was rubbing against this and wore through the powder coating, but honestly that's on the backside down toward the wheel, and I really don't care to bother with it. I'll paint over it if I need to, but I'll go ahead and get started installing it, and hopefully it'll go on as good as it looks. This ladder comes with a pretty good bit of hardware. I see much black oxide stainless hardware here. Got directions. It's also got an online YouTube video for installation as well, or at least it's a quick kind of time lapse. So it's made to go with their rack or mount into the tracks. So they even included some nuts that slide into your factory Mercedes tracks, which is pretty nice. And then this bracket's meant to go to their rack, or you could use this with any roof rack that was 3 inches tall or so. My roof rack is 2 inches tall, so I'm going to be using the 90-degree brackets and installing it right here. Here and on the other side of this mount. It's not super rigid, it's 1/8 inch, 2-inch aluminum angle. So we'll see how it does. And the first step for what I'm going to be doing is putting the lower bracket on, which attaches to the pinch weld. Mine was a little bit crushed from having been a previous Amazon van, but this guy gets bolted in right here. They've included self-tapping screws, but I refuse to use self-tapping screws. They have a place, but it's not here. So I'm going to use stainless bolts and then back it up with a washer and tighten it down. It'll be a lot more solid and just better than self-tappers. So that's where we're going to get started here. Alright, we've got those holes drilled. You can see where my body panel is kind of mauled right here. There is a lip underneath. See how close my edge distance is on that hole. It won't be particularly load bearing, but I didn't want to have a blank there. So, and I don't really have a good way to pop the body back out. It's actually pretty thick steel doubled up right there, so it was a pain enough to unsmear this thing from the bottom of the van. Next step's just to attach this bracket to the pinch weld. I'll be doing that with some 1/4-20 button head stainless bolts. Should be pretty quick. That's it. It's installed. Looks great. All I've got to do is drill 2 holes to the mounts up top and it'll be on. This ladder's got some pretty neat mounting options. So I showed you the plate where it attaches to their Van & Camp roof rack. or you could use it on whatever roof rack you have if it's a little bit taller than mine. Then you've got these brackets, which are meant to go into the factory roof rails, and it comes with an insert for that as well. And then if you remove these two bolts, a whole cartridge slides out, and then it's got about a 1.5 inch long kind of extension that sticks out, so you can flip that around and you can have it sticking up here or here, flipped over in any direction. So that gives you several options for location up top. So I'm going to be doing this flat on the side of my rack, which you'll see when I get up on the roof here. But several mounting options and pretty slick. So I've got the ladder mocked up here. I've actually moved the lower bracket to the inboard side of the pinch weld, which is not what the directions specify, but that brought the ladder in a little bit closer to the van. It was just too far out. It's about 3 inches right now. You could even do spacers and move it a little bit further in if you wanted to do. Now one downside that does kind of bind up the drain, you got these drains along the pinch weld, and that's gonna be in the way of that, so I'll be revisiting to make sure I don't end up with water in the body panel here. The next step, this bracket is meant to just go up and has a self-tapping screw that holds it into the unibody up there. I've got it mocked up as well, and it does not quite meet up angle-wise with the ladder or the piece of the subframe, so I may be making a bit of a wedge to kind of pick up that space. You have access to the back of this up here though, so you could put a nut and bolt as opposed to a self-tapper. I'm actually going to start this screw with this hole with a self-tapper just to see how it looks, and then if I have any problems with it, I'll probably be drilling that out and doing a nut and a bolt down the road. Be a little bit better of a fit and strength. But it gives you an idea. Now up top I've had to make some modifications to their brackets as well. I'm not going to go too deep into that because this is very specific to my rack, which I made, so it's not going to be particularly helpful. If you have a rack like mine or similar and you want any further details, you can just ask in the video. But I've taken their brackets and actually flipped them around and enlarged the hole right here, which brought me down 1/2 inch, and that's what allowed me to go underneath the split the seam down there and brought it in closer to the van. So now all I've got to do, actually clearance to this a little bit. So these two bolts are gonna be fairly close together, but that's fine for strength wise. I would have loved to have used this bolt, but it just would not have put it in a location exactly where I needed it. So I'll just be drilling a hole there and a hole there, and then we should be pretty much done. And the self-tapper at the bottom. Alright, I couldn't get a real good shot of the drilling, so I'm just leaving it out. But everything turned out good. Got to get used to it. Definitely an adjustment. It's pretty big. But I've got this one. It's a flare space flare, and I've got just about 1/2 inch of clearance from the flare at the closest point, which is exactly what I want. I don't want it to be sticking out any further than it needs to. It's a very, very solid, good feeling ladder. I can't imagine it being of any higher quality if you got the $800 versions, aside from maybe being one piece. This one does bolt together in the center to save on shipping, which is great with me. And since this bracket for reinforcement here is aluminum, it kind of deformed a little bit and conformed to the frame rail, which is perfect, so I didn't have to do any bending or making a new bracket. It doesn't seem to flex in when I step down. I will have to, like I mentioned earlier, address the water drain here, but it looks good. I'm up here on the ladder and you can see what I've done to attach it. Just use some stainless hardware, and fits nicely with the rest of the rack. It doesn't stick up any higher. It's actually a little bit lower. Clearance at about 30,000ths of an inch from the rack itself, so if I ever decide to remove it, it won't have worn grooves into my aluminum angle up here. you want to check out the rest of the build, and this is a DIY aluminum roof rack here, they're all on my YouTube channel. I think the ladder looks pretty good though. If the driveway weren't so crowded, I could get a better view. I will post a long-term review of this after I've had it for a while. If you got any questions, leave them on the channel. Hope you enjoyed it.